I welcome the high-level delegation of Cuba here in Geneva, and I do appreciate the excellent work done by Yamila Gonzalez-Ferrer. Globally, Cuba has one of the highest rates of female representation in parliament, with women holding nearly 56% of seats in the National Assembly. There is clear evidence of the progress made in the representation of women in the national parliament, considering that men held 77% of seats in 1981 compared to the 23% held by women. However, the devil is in details. Cuba is a socialist state in which the role of the Communist Party is enshrined in the new constitution approved 5 years ago. Article 5 states that the Communist Party is the only legitimate political party. In other words, the state party has an authoritarian government where political opposition is not permitted. Saying that, we need to understand that the real decision-making takes place in the Politburo and Secretariat, followed by Central Committee of the Communist Party of Cuba. In the 8th Politburo and Secretariat, there are currently 17 men and 3 women. Factually, there are 15% of women compared with 85% of men. Talking about government, a gender gap persists in government leadership, with only 19% of cabinet ministers held by women, 5 out of 25 ministries. This distribution of leadership roles reflects a broader issue of gender inequality in political representation and power. I would like to highlight that so-called hard power ministerial positions are occupied by men. That includes the ministers of Interior, Foreign Affairs, Justice, and as well as leadership in foreign trade and investment, finance and prices, and the central bank. Women hold the Ministry of Education, Labor and Social Security, etc. Gender equality has been a stated priority in Cuban politics and society, but significant gaps remain in terms of leadership roles in both the public and private sectors, including company boards. Men are still concentrated in the most influential spheres of governance. This pattern points to the systematic barriers that may limit women's access to more powerful sectors, suggesting that gender equality in Cuba's political system is more about symbolic representation. For future progress, Cuba may benefit from increased transparency, targeted policies to ensure the inclusion of racial minorities in leadership, and a more open environment for civil society organizations to operate freely. Cuba's leadership emphasizes the country's commitment to racial equality, but the absence of transparent data on the racial breakdown. The delegation shared the data to the committee covering the Article 3 earlier. In the cyberspace, I couldn't find any. I have a few questions. Number one, whether follow-up mechanisms have been established to periodically assess the progress made by the different policies with a view to measure the increase of the number of women in executive posts. Two, please provide data about the proportion of companies reporting that they have taken measures to promote gender equality in the executive level, particularly in engineering, transportation, and sugar industries. Three, could you bring us the concrete examples of the adoption of any specific goals and timelines, including for women in vulnerable situations, for example, through statutory quotas in public administration, and the Foreign Service, and for senior government positions, and the outcomes achieved. Four, given the significant progress in female representation in various sectors in Cuba, including parliament, the judiciary, and high-level positions in both national and international forums, what specific measures are being implemented to ensure that this progress translates into greater influence and decision-making power for women at all levels of governance? Five, how has the representation of women in Cuba's National Assembly translated into power sharing? In other words, how many heads of the standing committees are women, and which committees do women lead in the parliament? Six, what steps could Cuba take to address the underrepresentation of women, particularly Afro-descent women, in key decision-making roles like ministerial positions and senior leadership? And finally, Could you provide details on the civil society women's organizations in Cuba, and to what extent are they affected by the restrictions on foreign funding to NGOs in the state party? I thank you.